Hello YouTube, it's Alec here with you Underground, giving you a Throwback Thursday where we investigate some deck lists from some previous topping tournaments in order to just give you an entertaining way to maybe try playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's certainly something that me and some of my teammates have found to be interesting, so I felt like sharing. So the tournament we're going to investigate today is 2007 Shonen Jump Championship Series in Philadelphia, which was one of the last Shonen Jumps before Raza, the Storm Monarch, became legal, which means that we still get that perfect Circle Monarch flavor, but without Raza stacking things to the top of the deck, changing the way that momentum functions within that format. And without wasting any more time, let's look at some deck lists that were played. So the first deck list we're going to look at is going to be the first place winner, Jessy Samek's Perfect Circle Monarch deck, or Destiny Hero Monarch deck, which is the precursor to Perfect Circle before Raza came out, depending on how you consider him part of that format. And he plays 2 Card Troopers and 1 Sangan for floaters, 1 Elemental Hero Stratos, and one of the formats that Konami saw his effect prominent enough to end him up on the ban list many years later. 1 Destiny Hero Disc Commander. When he's special summoned from the graveyard, you get to draw 2 cards, and he probably actually deserves his ban. 2 Destiny Hero Fearmongers. They're good for reviving your Destiny Hero Disc Commander once you're set up in order to draw more cards, and also because of the threat of drawing 2 cards is so prominent in this format, because card advantage is so important. When your opponent suspects you have him, he does provide some good lasting defense unless your opponent believes that they can attack you for game. 3 Destiny Hero Malicious. This was before he was semi-limited. And this is before any synchro monsters or anything like that, but the reason you use him is primarily because he can recur copies of himself from the deck for tribute fodder. 3 Cyber Dragon. This is one of the most important cards of the format. When Cyber Dragon came out, back in the day, he was a defining card from the format, because if your opponent just controls a monster, you can get a 2100 beater, which is humongous during the time. But the real boss monsters of this particular deck were the Monarchs. And Jessy played 3 Thestalos, the Firestorm Monarch. I really appreciate this Monarch with our playtesting in this format, because the reason you play Monarchs is because they're pretty much guaranteed to get 2 cards from your opponent for the 1 card that is the Monarch. And Thestalos makes particular good work of guaranteeing that, because the way he takes cards out of your opponent's hand, then is just a huge beater that can get over cards and have a huge board presence with regard to monsters your opponent might have. And rounding out the monsters, he plays 3 Zaborg, the Thunder Monarch, because it's a good out to anything your opponent might have, particularly cards like Fearmonger that your opponent would love to have them destroyed by battle so they can draw 2 cards, but the Firestorm Monarchs, but the Thunder Monarch does a good job of getting around that by destroying them by card effects, and also destroying other Monarchs on your opponent's side of the field, so that you have the outlasting 2400 beater providing field presence. And finally, Treeborn Frog. I don't like this card as much in the deck, but I understand why people played it. It was just good tribute fodder to have, and a good option to have if you were running low on resources, or if you just opened with hands that didn't really support your Destiny Hero plays. Next, for the spells, he played 1 Rhoda, self-explanatory, 3 Destiny Draw, because that was Destiny Hero Draw Engine at the time. And then really particularly interesting about this format was he got to play 1 Snatch Steal and 2 Brain Controls, and having so many cards in the deck that can turn your opponent's monsters against them makes the way you establish field presence in this format pretty unique when compared to other formats that you might play. And the way that you're kind of incentivized to keep a clear board monster-wise, so your opponent can't use these cards to gain tribute fodder or to special summon Cyber Dragon, makes games very interesting as you anticipate what kind of cards your opponent might have and how best to prevent them from getting big momentum sways on their turns with cards like this. And Premature Burial, it's pretty much a staple in any format that it's legal in. Pot of Avarice. Pot of Avarice was legal in this format with Card Troopers and Monarchs and all the other cards you have running around. It's harder to get often in like plant format or in some of the later formats where it was legal, but it's still very potent. It serves as the pot of greed from their day. 2 Smashing Ground, it's good non-targeting removal. Jessy plays a lot of removal in order to get around problem cards in order to maintain control of the board, which is a particular advantage of his deck when looking at other ones. And 1 Heavy Storm and 1 MST to serve as your generic spell trap removal. And finally, for the traps, there's a pretty defensive trap lineup here. He plays 3 Sakuretsu armor, a full suit of them, in order to stop attacks from getting through and stop himself from getting OTK'd, which is relatively possible in this format, or at least if your opponent does some good amounts of damage to stop them from closing the sale and killing you. 1 Ring of Destruction, it's pretty much good in every format where it's legal before it got errated. Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force, and Call the Haunted, rounding out traps that are 1. And the second deck we're going to take a look at really quick is the 3rd or 4th place deck by Nick Langella. He plays a much more aggro build that is very entertaining and very strong within the format, but plays pretty differently in its own right, so it's worth exploring. First, he plays 3 Card Trooper instead of 2 in order to get good mills going, and also in order to get him through his deck as it floats. The 1 Sangan's pretty much staple. A different card that he plays is 2 Snipe Hunter, because you can turn your card advantage into spot removal, and also discard cards that you don't want in your hand into the graveyard. The 1 in 3 chance to fail the effect is pretty annoying, but when you're going for game and you have a lot of advantage, advantage isn't particularly relevant. He still plays the 3 Cyber Dragons, but he only plays 1 Zaborg the Thunder Monarch in this build in order to make room for the other boss monsters that he plays that are relatively unique. One of those being Genzo, who can lock down your opponent's traps and let you extend to make very large plays, and Dark Magician of Chaos, because that was a thing, and it's a very strong card because of its ability to recur spells. Also, its ability to banish anything it attacks over is relevant, so if you attacked over a Card Trooper or Sangan or Treeborn Frog or Disc Commander, you could put yourself in a very strong position with DMOC. He also plays the Hero Engine, 1 Stratos, 2 Fearmongers, 1 Disc Commander, 3 Malicious, and he also plays 1 Dasher. Dasher's pretty good because it's a tribute, because it's a 1 tribute card that can get to 3100, which means it can get over the strong threats of the day, being the Monarchs. Also serves as more Destiny draw fuel, and also if you draw one of your boss monsters while he's in the graveyard, you can instantly special summon it, which I don't know how useful this was for him in the tournament itself, but it is entertaining if you like draw DMOC, special summon it, get a spell card. It can put you in just kind of really good positions for no reason. But at the end of the day, it's definitely an interesting pick. For the spells, he also played the Rhoda and the 3D draws, which were pretty stable because of the way how important the Destiny Hero Engine was in the format. He played Heavy Storm, Mystical Space Typhoon, Pile of Avarice, 2 Brain Control, Snatch Steal. An interesting card that he played was 2 Metamorphosis. Now, Thousand Eyes Restrict was banned at this point, but Metamorphosis was not, and you still have some pretty strong fusion options to get into. We can discuss the extra deck once we're done with this and talk about those. Finally, he teched a Nobleman of Crossout, because if you catch your opponent setting an important card like Disc Commander or a Treeborn Frog, Nobleman of Crossout could put you in a really strong position. He played 1 Limiter Removal. This was a good way to steal games by getting your Cyber Dragons to 4200 and getting your Card Troopers to 3800 very quickly. Also, you can Metamorphosis into cards like Cyber Twin Dragon, and Limiter Removal will open very potent game shots with those. So, it was pretty good at enabling you to close the sale and attack for gain. 1 Premature and 1 Scapegoat. Scapegoat does a good job of stalling out in this format because, unlike Go Control format, Scapegoat wasn't really an integral part of it, so people don't play outs like they did back in Go Control format. And for the traps, much lighter on the trap lineup. He plays Ring, TT, Mirror Force, Call the Haunted, all limited and all very powerful in their own right. Finally, for fusions, I don't have his entire fusion deck, but We do have some of the more important ones, or ones that we think that use more potent to play. I'll link the deck list in the description below so you can see the ones that we don't have, but Cherubim the Fire Knight is your level 3 just because it's the biggest, and without BLS in this format, lights and darks aren't particularly important. Darkfire Dragon's your biggest level 4. Reaper the Nightmare. Zaborg's a level 5, so you can do Reaper the Nightmare or Dark Bolter the Terrible, but really what's important is your level 6s, because Malicious can recur itself. You can use Metamorphosis to turn it instantly into a boss monster, and you have some pretty strong picks. One is Darkblade the Dragon Knight, who, when he does damage, you can banish up to 3 cards in your opponent's graveyard, which means you can use this to mount attacks on your opponent's Disc Commanders and their Treeborn Frogs, or their Malicious, or anything in the graveyard that could potentially get them an advantage. You can use Darkblade the Dragon Knight to rob them of that by using Metamorphosis on a Malicious that can instantly replace itself. 2 Ryu Senshi, he's kind of your go-to Kai. He's very strong in this format. He can't be targeted by spells, which makes him immune to Brain Control and Snatch Steal, and you can pay 1,000 life points to negate any trap, which means that he's, like Genzo, just puts you in these positions where you can get very aggressive without fearing repercussions, because 1,000 life points isn't really a huge cost to pay for getting rid of your opponent's trap cards. And finally, rounding it out, he played 2 Cyber Twin Dragons, because you can use this with level 8s in conjunction with your machines to just do a ton of damage and open up very good game shots. So these are the 2 decks that me and Vince have had a lot of fun testing in the format of 2007 Shonen Jump Championship. Perfect Circle Monarchs pre-Raza. It's very interesting because before Raza, the way that momentum works is a little bit different, because things can't end up on the top of your deck. So it changes the game and makes it rather entertaining. So just wanted to present these lists to you guys. I'll link them, the source in the description below if you want to look into them. But it's a very entertaining format to play because of the way that board presence works. So if you get bored of testing for nationals in this pre-national season, I'd encourage you to try it out. You might find something you like. Have a great day.